To begin with our first panel, and the rules are quite simple. I've asked each of the panelists who are I'll introduce them in a second, are very distinguished in their field, so they really have a lot to say. But I've asked them to keep it short because we also want to hear from you. No Mas Hambre is about a conversation, it's a dialogue, not just between us in this room, but with the readers of Latino Magazine, who are 250,000 people around the country, much like you, opinion leaders from nonprofits, from the federal government, from academia, from corporate America, from Latino organizations. So we look forward to your participation. But let me introduce the panelists, very quickly, starting from the far right of the stage. Ellen Teller is the Director of Government Affairs for the Food Research and Action Center, known as FRAC. And she directs the development and implementation of FRAC's legislative agenda. So we look forward to hearing all about that today in our discussion. Next to her, we've got Shannon Honeyke here from Minnesota. So we're delighted you could make it. She's the Director of Strategic Alliances and Partners for United Healthcare, with over 20 years' experience with strategic partnerships in organizations like Feeding America. So that's particularly of interest here. We're honored as well to have with us Chief Executive Officer of the National Hispanic Council on Aging. It was the premier organization, Latino nonprofit, dealing with the issues of the Latino elderly, and she focused on improving the quality of life for Hispanic older adults and their families. So thank you so much. And our moderator is Maggie Biscar, the program manager for the ARP Foundation's Hunger Impact Area. And her primary responsibilities include managing the Hunger Innovation Grant Program, as well as other state and community-based hunger initiatives. A big round of applause for our first panel. So Maggie, let me turn it over to you.
Okay. Is my mic on? Okay. So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. I was at the No Mas Hambre conference last year, and I thought it was wonderful, and I'm really happy to be here representing AARP Foundation today and kicking off our discussion about challenges to reducing food insecurity. So, as Maxine mentioned, hunger has been one of the Foundation's primary areas of focus for the last 2 years. And I can honestly tell you, in my 7 years at AARP Foundation, that the last 2 years, have been really exciting. I've never been more proud of the work of AARP Foundation or the work that I'm doing personally than I have in the last 2 years. So I love this work, and I am, although it's relatively new to me, 2 years in, I still feel very new to it. There's so much to learn, but I'm thrilled to be among this really esteemed group of people. So as Alfredo mentioned, in my role on our team, I wear many hats, but my favorite hat is managing our innovation grants. And that is really because I have the privilege to go out and see what is happening in the community and what the work of these very different organizations serving very different communities and different clients are doing, and have often a chance to meet the clients and see the interactions and really see on their faces how grateful they are for the help they're receiving and how much of a difference it's making in their lives. And recently I met a man in Boston on one of my site visits who was part of a program that is homeless and formerly homeless, pretty vulnerable older adults. So this man had been homeless for a large part of his life, but when I met him, he was living in his own apartment, looked very healthy, was very chatty. It was hard for us to get in and get out. We were delivering food as part of the program. But as we left, his case manager said to me, you wouldn't have believed, 6 months ago, this man had just recovered from cancer. We didn't think he was going to make it. And, for part of the time receiving treatment, he was on the street. But now that he's stabilized in a home and receiving this nutritional education and food, just and it was pretty basic food, but nutritional. I would have never known that about this man. And he was an older musician from the Dominican Republic, just a charming little man. And anyway, I think of him when I come to work every day, and am excited about the work that we have to do. So, also, these grants are really teaching us about the best practices that are out there, and as Maxine said, our hope is to seed some things that can be replicated around the country in different communities. So Maxine already mentioned a lot of the numbers, the 9 million older Americans at risk of hunger, and the fact that older Latinos and African Americans disproportionately experience food insecurity, and we all know that. And she talked about the huge increase between 2001 and 2009. I just want to hone in a little bit on some of the finer points of that research, and then just start us off with some of the big challenges that we see and what needs to be done, what action needs to be taken. So in the 2 years between 2007 and 2009, really during the recession, the number of food insecure adults increased by 32% in those 2 years alone. And in those same 2 years, there was an increase of almost 40% among the 50 to 59 segment. And Maxine touched on this, but that's really a group that is especially vulnerable to the economic distress of recent years because they often don't qualify for the programs that are traditionally serving families with young children and don't yet qualify for those, the safety net for older adults. We saw that the recessionary increase in food insecurity among older adults was most pronounced among those older adults with higher incomes, which was also a little bit of a surprise. So it's not limited to those who are unemployed or those on fixed incomes. At least to me, that was a surprise. I really thought it would be much more correlated with low incomes. Really, up to 20% of working class adults earning between $30,000 and $40,000 a year are also experiencing food insecurity. So these are people working and struggling to make ends meet, even though they're going to their jobs every day. Unemployment and underemployment and low incomes are certainly significant risk factors for older adults in America, but they are not the only ones, and there are a few others that I think are worth mentioning. Older adults living alone who are disabled or have limited mobility are at particular risk for food insecurity. We've already heard about the disproportionate representation among African Americans and Latinos. But even when the data was controlled for income, those groups, African Americans and Latinos, are still 30% more likely to be food insecure than their white counterparts in the same income bracket. So there are some other things at play there besides income. So what are some of the major challenges that we need to take action on? From our perspective, here are some of the big three. First and foremost, we really need to ensure that older Americans are able to age with their financial security intact. And what does that mean? That means jobs. A lot of these people are willing and able to work. But the slow recovery of the job market continues to put older Americans at risk. Maxine talked about the statistics that highlighted the disparities between older job seekers and their younger counterparts. This is a really huge challenge and one that demands innovative solutions. And she mentioned, I think, that we have other impact areas. Our income impact area is working really hard, and they have seeded several grants, 10 grants around the country, really focused on job readiness for the 50-plus population and looking at the jobs of the future and really training that set for those jobs. Some of them include community translators, home health care, and other gerontological jobs because, again, there will be a huge group of older adults to serve. So, secondly, we need to ensure that as they age, older Americans are able to maintain continuous health insurance. Maxine also highlighted that. But really, older adults that have to pay entirely out of pocket for their health care costs are much less likely to have significant budgets to meet their food needs. We will, as she mentioned, be releasing research soon that shows that not having health insurance is one of the most significant risk factors for the 50-plus food insecurity. Third, and last, I will just say, I will echo again what Maxine said about eligible older adults and eligible older Latinos in particular need to enroll in SNAP at higher levels. SNAP has been one of our major objectives since we rolled out hunger, but as we move along, it's an increasing priority for us, especially as it relates to Latino older adults. We've already heard about the stats about older adults in Latino SNAP enrollment and some of the findings around the barriers to enrollment, and I think we're going to talk a lot more about those today with this group who's here. So with that, I'm going to stop and turn it over to, we're going to start with Ellen at the end from the Food Research Action Center.
Good morning. I'll be brief, and it was interesting going over, Maggie, the 3 priority areas. And the way we look at it from FRAC is if you get your seniors into the SNAP program, it increases their health outcomes, which is your second goal, and it also frees up resources to go into other areas of the household's needs, which is your first priority. So SNAP rocks. That's the message that you'll hear today. And coming from FRAC and being here this morning at as my babysitter said, no, Ellen, it's no mas hombre, it's no mas hambre. It's the New York accent, it really screws it up. You're here today at a time when major decisions are being made with regard to the SNAP program. Yesterday, the president and Leader Boehner were having conversations, and one of the issues that they are resolving for this fiscal cliff negotiation is how the Farm Bill can be included in this grand bargain. And one of the 2 sticking points for that is SNAP. The Senate has passed a Farm Bill that cuts SNAP by $4 billion over 10 years in a provision that disproportionately impacts seniors and persons with disabilities. And the House Agriculture Committee passed a bill that cuts $16 billion over 10 years in SNAP, not only decreasing monthly allotments, which is what the Senate bill would do, but also would kick 2 million people off of the program completely. And the House's provision would also have an impact because it would eliminate free school meals for 280,000 children across the country. So these are huge, impacts on the SNAP program. So after we adjourn today, this panel, I would implore you to get on your cell phones, call your members of Congress, make sure they weigh in with their leadership, and the White House switchboard, 456-1414, and I was told by my 20-something counterparts that you should be tweeting at White House and at Barack Obama. And we encourage you to weigh in on these because these decisions are going to be made within the next few days. So your participation here today is just critical.
Terrific. Shannon from United Healthcare, would you like to go next? Before you do, I just want to publicly thank United Healthcare because they do fund a lot of our hunger work and have been tremendous, not only funders, but partners on the work that we do. So I'm really glad you're on the panel with us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sure.
So United Healthcare looks really at hunger from more of a health issue, quite honestly. I think we've had a lot of discussions here today in terms of some really difficult decisions that older Americans especially need to make. And quite honestly, our position is that those positions should never had to be made in terms of deciding over healthcare or medicine over food, or making a tough decision of feeding their children that they're maybe in a position of caregiving for and feeding themselves. And so we really are supportive of the ARP's foundation of Drive to End Hunger. I would just briefly say that as the healthcare leader industry itself, United Healthcare really sees itself and lives out its mission of helping people live healthier lives every day. And that's certainly through innovation and the quality and effectiveness of the healthcare system, but more importantly through the eradication of hunger itself. And as I had alluded to earlier, healthcare really